If you ask some Kenyans what is currently happening in Kenyan politics, they will tell you the government of William Samoei Ruto is pressing on. But we have this problem of threatened maandamanos by one Raila Odinga, who wants to frustrate the government of William Ruto. But of course he will not succeed. Nothing can change. The Supreme Court confirmed Ruto as president. What are these Azimio people talking about? That is the kind of analysis you will get from many Kenyans, especially UDA supporters. But what is the real situation on the ground? Actually, the real situation on the ground is very different. Everything is not the way it seems to be. Things are not what they seem to be. Things are not what you think they are. Sample the following. We are now starting to see animosity towards the Ruto administration being displayed very openly. Even when Ruto and his people go for meetings. Of course, his propaganda boys have done a very good job of damage control and keeping a lot of this information away from mainstream media, or at least away from being published or broadcasted. But that is the reality. Number two, the Ruto administration seems to be going out of its way to provoke and anger the electorate, the people of Kenya. Then it is no secret that the Kenyan economy is struggling. People are out of jobs, out of valuable sources of income. Kenyans are suffering. There is hunger in the country, etc., etc. That is the reality of the situation. And any government facing such a situation, even without Azimio on the other side, even without an opposition on the other side, is not a government that can be described as being stable. I think you'll agree with me. And meanwhile, on the other side of the political divide, the Azimio juggernaut is gathering even more strength. And indeed it has gained a vast percentage of those who are supporting the hustler movement. And I'm especially talking about young people, who blindly followed the hustler narrative, believing it to be true, believing all the promises they were being fed. Youths who are gullible, they swallowed everything, and they said hustler will bring a change. There will be numbers in the government. Mamambogas will be in the government. Border riders will be in the government, in the hustler government, which of course has not happened. Bottom line, Kenyans are fed up. Now, of course, we have to appreciate that the UDA fellows are very good at propaganda. If you spend any length of time on social media, you will be convinced that everything is okay. There's nothing to worry about. The UDA administration is solidly in power. That's the impression you'll get. Even today, just before I came into the studio to make this recording, I saw a propaganda campaign claiming that Charity Kaluki Ngilu, the former Kitui governor, was regretting not vying for re-election, was regretting supporting Azimio. And maybe this propaganda would have been half believable had the people peddling it not been too tempted, indeed so tempted, that they decided to include a line, a favorite line of theirs in this propaganda, which is attributed directly to them. It's their favorite catchphrase. And that is, all these problems Azimio are bringing is because they want a nusu mkate government. Yeah. That particular comment was attributed to Charity Ngilu. Now, for those who know Mama Ngilu and her long career in politics, of course assuming you have not looked at the more obvious things, like the fact there was no video capturing Mama Ngilu saying these words. There was no meeting where Mama Ngilu went and said these words. She was just being quoted from nowhere. Anyway, those who have known Mama Ngilu for long will immediately tell you, you see ukweli. But many people bought this propaganda hook, line and sinker. Many people taking in social media are shocked and they're wondering what is wrong with Mama Ngilu. And yet this is only propaganda. Mama Ngilu didn't say any such words. Neither will she say any such words in 1,000 years. That one I can assure you. But before I give you a big hint of where all this is going to end, and very soon by the way, I want to bring to your attention the biggest miscalculation done by the Ruto administration. This simple truth, this major factor, means the following. Number one, that there's no way the UDA administration can survive with or without Azimio and Raila Odinga. No way. Even clever propaganda and tactics from the KANU rulebook of the second president of Kenya, Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, who ruled Kenya for 24 long years, even the best tricks from that rulebook will not work. So what is this factor I'm talking about? In one word, it is devolution. You see, while it is true that our system of elections and elected leaders creates a situation where the winner takes it all, well, that is true. You have become president, you're the president, and you're in charge, and you have so much power, etc., etc. It is also true that power has been devolved, but it has taken Kenyans quite some time to realize what has happened here. You see, in the old days, when there were no counties, if you lost the presidency and say you were in Kisumu County or even Kwale County, and maybe you're relying on the other person winning the presidency so that development can reach your particular area, in those days, you were done if your candidate didn't win. However, today it means that if you're in Kisumu County, for instance, and your candidate didn't win, things are not so bad. Because the county government is your political party. So if you're a tenderpreneur, if you want to do business with the government of Kisumu County, for instance, you don't have a problem. You don't have to talk to the national government. The national government and the presidency is not very important to you. I'm sure you get my drift. But there's something else very critical here that comes into play, and this is Kenyan politics, that I want us to take note of. You see, the reason why after an election people defect to the president or the president's side, that has been happening in Kenya for decades. The reason why people do that is so that they can benefit individually, so that they can be able to gain the favor of the president to take development to their area, to their county. That one is no longer a factor. Or at the very least, it's not as important a factor as it used to be. Now, to drive my point home, let me give you an example from the Moi days. After the 1992 multi-party elections, which were rigged by KANU, and Moi returned as president, many Kenyans were disheartened. And many big business people who were banking on the opposition removing KANU from power in 1992 were in trouble as businesses. So what did they do? they trooped back to Moi, gave huge donations to Moi for a project of his choice, made contact with people who were close to the administration so that they could find a way of working closely with the administration. And in that way, the Moi government, just by virtue of being in power, managed to gain a lot of support that they didn't have going into that election. Fast forward to the present. If you've been paying attention to the news, you will notice that one strategy of the UD administration has been to try to get people to defect on their side, to try and gather support quickly from people who are not on their side going to the general elections last year in August. But if you have been very keen and observant, you will have noticed that the response has been lukewarm at best. Of course, the propaganda boys within UDA have inflated and highlighted and overblown any small win. If, for example, the legislator for Langata goes to State House, they have made sure they circulate photographs widely. I believe they even got Jalas to pose with President Ruto to send across a message. And indeed, the propaganda boys have succeeded, because in the minds of many Kenyans, the UDA government is very successful on this front. In fact, Azimio supporters fear that the government will buy everybody to their side, convince virtually everybody to their side. They're worried about that. But let me tell you today, the reality is very different from what you think you're seeing. Bottom line, Moi tactics and Kanu tactics will not work in 2023, believe it or not. And by the way, there are very important components of the Moi strategy which have been left out. For instance, Moi took hunger in the country very, very seriously. Indeed, he took it so seriously that he would stop everything else, every campaign, every other thing they wanted to do, to focus on getting relief food where it was required as quickly as possible. What has been the response of the UDA government? They have come out and asked for donations. They have been very slow in responding. In fact, if you listen to what the UDA government is saying, in many instances you'll be convinced that they're completely ignoring the very serious hunger situation Kenya faces today. And if you see one or two cabinet secretaries, or even Ruto himself say something about this issue, it is just words. Same as the words we had during the UDA campaigns. Words that are never followed by the action. And so, if I can come back to the question I asked right at the beginning, what is the state of the nation of Kenya today as we speak? I'd say it is as follows. The UDA administration is on very shaky ground. And where we stand right now, we are on the verge of a revolution. When in a certain part of Kenya, a politician gets into trouble simply by referring to Ruto as president, then you know it is not business as usual. And if the place in Kenya where that happens is Western Kenya, amongst the Mulembe nation, one of the most peaceful communities we have and peace-loving communities we have in the country today, then you know kumedhuka. Oh yes, there's no other way of looking at it. And to sum it all up, in my opinion, I could be wrong, I'm human, but based on the information I have so far, and my careful analysis of the situation, the political situation in the country today, what I can say is that we are not very far from that place where we're going to hear the following words. Mimi, Raila Amolo Odinga, naapa kulinda katiba. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu nisaidie. I can't predict precisely when it will happen, but it is going to happen very soon. But what I fear is what is going to happen before we hear those words and we see that swearing in ceremony with our own two eyes. Of course, you're welcome to disagree with what I'm saying, but I beg you, go back and analyze every aspect of Kenyan politics at the moment, and then go and analyze aspects of politics in other countries that had a change of guard led by the people. Sri Lanka, neighboring Sudan, etc., etc. Just carefully analyze and then come back and look at the Kenyan situation. I assure you, your conclusion will end up being very close to mine. But even if it isn't, you're welcome to your views. Let's wait and see what happens. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.